Hi, I'm Rebecca, and I'm here at Quality Sewing, and we are going to talk about repurposing and upcycling and anything to do with garment getting funner. So we have a whole bunch of examples of things that I've done over the past few years. Some of my favorite things. My most recent big project was this. This was just a jean jacket, did not have a collar, Merona. A lot of you are familiar with that brand. This was a full lined skirt. It was brand new, but I got it at the thrift shop with the tags still on. These were from a bodysuit. It was a very ugly bodysuit, and I just picked the roses off, and all the beadwork I just hand did. So what I did was I had felted wool from a couple old sweaters that actually a friend gave me, made the flowers, started to lay out the lace, stitched it on, and it just piece by piece. And with the beading and the embellishing, in total, this project took about 35 hours. So it's not a quick project, but it was a great excuse to watch Pride and Prejudice several times. That's what I know about that. This one was 2 different garments and some random lace. It was a lace top with the underlay. And I'm trying to think what the other part was. Oh, this was from a tablecloth. This little inset was from a tablecloth. And this was just random fabric, and again in a thrift shop. And then lace that I actually bought at Sew Expo a few years ago. I can't explain the process of how the designs come into my mind because I don't even know how it happens. It just evolves as I start to sew. And if I think something needs more texture, like this definitely needed texture, I added texture around the bottom of the hem and contrasting thread. I don't like everything all matchy-matchy, but it can't clash too bad either. These are flowers that were just from the thrift shop. Again, almost everything's from the thrift shop. Beads, and you just try it. Put it on, lay it on, see what it looks like, and eventually it looks great. And if you do little hidden things underneath lace, they just sort of peek out. You can see it's there, but you don't really know what it is. It's kind of fun. I get a lot of comments about things like that. There's lots of really basic things. This was 2 jackets combined into one. Again, it was a collarless jean jacket. And I think this was a Gap, actually. Old Navy. It was Old Navy. And there was just random pieces of upholstery fabric. I used heat set rhinestones to do some of the designs. They're all individually placed because I didn't know what I wanted to do. This was a jacket that I actually bought because I loved the buttons. See the little rhinestone buttons? But it was a girls 14. I'm not a girls 14. So I added the cuffs along with more of the buttons on top of this plain edged jean jacket. I added the collar, and I loved the brand. I think this is a brand from some local big store like Target or something. I don't know, but anytime I find anything at a thrift shop that has that tag, I buy it and I put it on the outside because I just think it's super fun. I used the couching foot to add some lace. I inset the whole back of the other jacket into the back of this jacket. I just twist fabric. A lot of people know how to make ribbon roses. It's a similar technique. I say technique, but really I wing it the whole time. You just have to try it. If you don't try it, you'll never know how fun it can be. This one was another really great one. I love this. Unfortunately, by the time it was done, it didn't fit me, but I can't get rid of it because it's too much fun. This was boiled wool that was in, I think it was in a free pile. And then this was a really ugly sweater that had a big ruffle front and a stand-up sort of Mandarin type collar. And I just literally took scissors, cut it, got the shape I wanted, and then just started adding pieces using decorative stitching. on my Pfaff icon, which I love. These were buttons that I got at Sew Expo from a couple of ladies who travel over to Europe every year, or used to before COVID. And they would buy from old warehouses where they had just leftover things in attics and all kinds of really cool textiles. I don't know. I just can't explain it. It just all comes together. And I do rip things apart. I sew and rip, or as Riva would say, the frog stitch, the rivet. This is pretty special. This lace is part of a cocktail length wedding dress from the 70s. One of our customers who was from here, now lives in Arizona, gave me her wedding dress. It had long sleeves, but it had been hanging in a closet for so long. The tops were yellow and she didn't know what to do with it. She'd seen some of my repurposed projects and knew that I could do something fun. So I made this skirt. I don't wear it anymore, but I wore it a lot for a long time. This inset was actually an older lady's top. I think Talbot's or something like that. And I just loved the kind of scrunchy texture of it. The denim was from a pair of jeans, long straight leg, wide leg jeans. And then I couldn't tell you where this fabric's from. And then the burgundy underneath is actually the lining from a wool coat. And again, you can see I did layers and texture, decorative stitching. You really can't go wrong. You just have to try it and see what you can come up with. That was really, really fun. And I made her a little lingerie bag out of some of the fabric. She was really happy with that. That was really fun. This was a t-shirt that I really liked it, but I knew I could make something really great. This is literally just a piece of knit fabric, again, at the thrift shop. I can't tell you how it happened. I just did it. I just cut and then I inset, and I did a little inset on the sleeve. And I just kind of see how it goes. And if I like it, I keep it, or else I add on to it. This really didn't take very long. I'll bet you this took me about half an hour. I really do like this part though. Just kind of a folded over box pleat type of thing. I am not a totally technical person. I wing it. I'm a winger. I'm a good winger. And this is a vintage brooch. I just thought really kind of brought it all together. So when I wash it, I just take the brooch off. But that's a really fun dress. I've worn that a lot. Let's see. Oh, this was really fun. This had sleeves I just could not handle. They came down in a kind of a gathered with a band, and they were puffy, and I just didn't like that. This is fabric that I bought at Expo. You gotta love Sew Expo. And I literally just freehand cut these shapes and started stitching them on. The only thing I did different to the dress was the sleeves. Other than that, it's just some sort of applique, and it's really just big zigzags. The biggest zigzags I could do. That was it. And there's a little bit on the front. This is the back. So then on the front, there was just a little bit to catch your eye. But the back's like a little party going on there. This is really, I love this. This, my mother-in-law gave me, I've got a hanger there, a shirt to Becca size for her. So she gave me this shirt. I think she got this at Costco. Riva actually gave me some lace that she wasn't using. It happened to find its way onto here. And this was a pajama top that I bought specifically for this project. And I'm going to show you this technique on what I'm doing today. But it's a very easy, fun, and if you're needing a little extra width, it expands the width a little bit. And it's really pretty, really pretty. And you can put lace, not lace, you can do all kinds of stuff. But anyway, that was a fun one. She hasn't seen this yet, so that's kind of neat. This one I actually made a hat band to go with this. Most of the people that know me from here, I used to wear a lot of hats. Well, in my new career, I don't really wear many hats. But I made a hat band to match this, and I used to wear whatever hat I wanted with the matching hat band. This was, I think this was just a throw, like a blanket. This denim was again from the same jeans that I did over here. Same denim. I don't throw a lot of that stuff away. And a vintage button, very, very nice, fun button. I love that. And pieces from who knows what. I literally just wing it. I didn't have a pattern. I had a top, this same style that a friend gave me. It was mesh, but I wanted something for the cooler months, so I used it as a pattern. And then I did it reverse. You can see there's the serged edge on the outside to give it a little more texture, a little more fun. So that was kind of fun. This, oh, I've worn this a lot. I love this. This is a sleeveless gown, and it had the matching sweater. All I did to the sweater was add to it. I didn't cut anything away. The dress, I did insets of lace. You can see, couldn't tell you where I got the lace. I think it was a dress. And then just little tiny pops of rhinestone, kind of a smoky rhinestone. And I actually used a matching metallic thread of the same color. Can't remember what kind it is either. I'm saying that a lot. But anyway, you can see little tiny embellishments. And you wouldn't think those would be noticed, but really, just the light hits it and it just pops it. Oh, it's just so much fun. This was off of a jacket. I didn't even like the jacket. It was a very heavy wool woven jacket. I just loved the embellishment around the edge. And so I bought the jacket for the embellishment. And I think that looks really, really pretty. And I have worn that a lot. Oh, this is great. I keep saying that, but I do like this stuff. This was, what was the brand? Oh, Nordstrom. A suede jacket. It was literally just like a denim jacket style. I just cut it. I know I took my rollerblade or rotary cutter. I remember doing this, and I laid it out and just went whoop. Suede cuts beautifully. It's not lined, which is actually kind of nice when you're doing something like this. I made the piping. This was actually part of a shower curtain, but I wanted the color and the texture, the stiffness. And so I made the piping. The buttons were a little bit too bright and gaudy, so I toned them down by wrapping them with this mesh. It's got some special name, I can't remember. So we went to a function where you had to wear a name tag, and I didn't take the name tag off soon enough, but you can fix that. I just haven't. And in the back, this was a little embellishment that I also bought at Expo, and more of this mesh. And then I made the tie again out of the shower curtain and just kind of played with it. It gave it a lot of shape. You can see the piping all around the edge. The buttons on the sleeves, I literally cut the cuff off the same way I did the front of the jacket. And these were pretty bright, but I thought that just really gave them a little sparkle and quieted it down a little bit. That's a lot of fun. That's a skirt underneath. Kind of has a bustle, kind of like in the old days, way old days. This one, this is a favorite as well. This was a sweater, and guess what? Live a little, same tag. And this was a girl's size small dress with very large pleats. I kept the pleats in the back. So there was pleats, but when I undid all the pleats, it made it large enough to fit at the bottom of the sweater. I used the piping from around the neck and around the sleeve openings as decoration on the skirt. And again, I did the sort of ribbon rose technique just with scraps of fabric and lace. And it's pretty fun. Oh, and the sleeves. The sleeves were just a straight, plain sleeve. Cut them at an angle. I like doing that. I'm going to do that today on the project I'm doing, and then added a bit of the lace on the bottom. So that's kind of fun. And I'll just quickly show you two more. This was a very plain sweater. It had just a regular straight collar, which I promptly cut off. I don't know how I came up with the shape for this, but I did. And you can see the light comes through the lace. It doesn't really show on the collar, but when I would wear a different colored shirt underneath, it would shine through or show through, and there's a heart in the back. And then little inset pleats just adds a really pretty little distinction to the bottom of it. And I did gather part of the sleeve and inset a little bit of lace at the bottom. I put a large, what are these, large grommet on here, and just added a little piece of, I forget what this kind of ribbon's called. I wing it a lot. And this was really fun. It's linen, so it's a little wrinkly. So I loved the jacket, but it was kind of plain. This was lace all connected together, and I cut them each and stitched each one on. And many of them, I actually put a little rhinestone in the center just to pop it a little bit. A little sprinkle of hot set rhinestones. You'll notice I like the bling. The buttons, these ones have buttons. These were antique buttons, also came from the tour in Europe where they get these vintage buttons and things from the old warehouses and manufacturing places. A lot of fun. So you just have to try. You just place it, sew it on. You can always unsew it. And that's what I know. Lots of fun. So right now I'm going to take a regular t-shirt and a little, I don't even know if it's a top or a dress. It doesn't have a tag in it. And I'm going to make a top. This is the base, similar to the coral colored one right here. Of course, it's not going to look the same, but it's going to be lots of fun. So right off the bat, I can show you. Just going to, doesn't have to be perfect. I do line up the sides to some degree. Make sure I've got that at the back, and I literally just cut. I don't really measure. Just cut a little piece out of the back. You can use a rotary cutter. I just wasn't sure what my setup would be here, and I thought I would just use my scissors. And so now you can see there's the opening. And the sleeves, I'm going to do the same thing to the sleeves as on the gray and brown dress. I want this to be a little bit fun. You don't have to worry about being too precise because there's no pattern. Nobody knows what you were trying to do. Don't tell them.
Okay, Rebecca, we have a question.
Yep.
So you cut the wedge out of the back of the shirt.
Yep.
And then you lined up the sleeves together and cut them both at the same time.
Yes.
Is that what you were doing?
I did. So now the sleeves are the same length with the same angle. And I will be adding some of this lace off of this other top onto this. And I know it's hard to see, but I did choose this color intentionally. There is gray, almost the exact gray, sprinkled throughout this top. It's how I decided to use that gray lace, and his arms are gray. There's not a lot, but I thought, heck, I'll run with it. And so now, because we're going to lengthen this top a little bit. A lot of ladies like just a little extra coverage. I'm one of them. So I just lay it out, and I'm going to take the back of this. This has lining, and I'm going to leave the lining, even though it's not totally attached. I am going to leave the lining in there. And I don't even worry too much about where the seams are. I mean, I kind of eyeball it, but it doesn't really matter. And I want it down a little longer, so about, I don't know, 6-8 inches. And then the top of this, perfect. So move that out of the way so I don't cut it. And it's pretty even. I really like the bottom of this, so I'm going to leave it attached. It's got a really nice finish to the edge. And I'm just eyeballing at an angle up to, you can mark it if you need to, but I typically don't. I really do just wing it. Okay. Okay, so that's going to work in the back. And we're just going to cut everything while we're standing here. So I'll show you. This is going to fit right in here. So that's going to fill that, and it's lined. So it'll be solid in there. And one thing I didn't do, which I can do now, is measure how much I'm going to need for the rest of the bottom of the original shirt. So I just line it up and see if there's going to be enough this way. And there isn't quite. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to adjust it. Just make it work. Like I said, there was no pattern. Nobody knows what the original plan was. And I will just kind of blend that in to the angle. These are the trade secrets nobody tells you. It's called winging it. There we go. By the time you sew it, you'll never know that I did that. And then thankfully on the top, it's got sort of a extra little piece up here. I am literally just going to cut this off. I don't know what this part's called, a flounce maybe. Okay, so I'm going to, minimum I need is that length to do around the sleeve, but I want it actually quite full. So I'm going to do another half again, and I'll just snip this. That's my precision. And I've got another half on this side of the dress. So I'm going to cut that off. You can plan more. I don't. I tend to do my best creative, the bulk of it anyway, just by just winging it. But you can definitely strategize. The most I plan really is the color coordinating. Okay, let's see if that's long enough. Okay. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. I am going to cut this little seam off. And I only need it that big. Okay, and then I do need the bottom for the bottom of the t-shirt. And I don't need the lining for the bottom of the t-shirt. Just gonna make sure I get enough length for what I want to do. There we go. Okay, that might be all we take off there. we're gonna go over to the machine. I'm using a cover stitch. I do have the sewing machine set up. I'm not sure how much I'll use it, but you use whatever you're comfortable with. Anything I do with the cover stitch, you could use with, there's cover stitch type stitches on most sewing machines, or even a zigzag. You can use a zigzag. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Mostly you're not going to see it. And I tend to do the hard part first, and the hardest part is the insert in the back. I'm just gonna match my front and back up again. And I'm gonna start at the top. I don't always do this, but I'm gonna start at the top because I have 2 layers. It's a little trickier. And in this case, I'm going to lay the t-shirt fabric over top of the lace fabric. Oops, I want to make sure my blade is down. That would have been dangerous. Okay. And I'll start stitching. And what I do, this is not an official technique. I start stitching, I pull it back off the stitch fingers underneath. I pull the fabric back a little bit and I stitch over it again. That's my back stitching, so to speak. And I just make sure I'm covered about 1/2 inch. Doesn't matter if it's a little bit more. The nice thing with a knit fabric is it's quite forgiving, especially when it has a pattern on it. And then line up about another 6 or 8 inches. I work with about that, whatever that is, 8-10 inches maybe, that much length at a time, so I can sort of control my working area. Making sure I'm not catching the rest of my fabric underneath. I've done that before. It's not fun picking it out. And again, just overlapping a good 1/2 inch. It's probably more, but I can feel it underneath, so I know roughly where the edge of the fabric is. And I chose a knit for this project because it doesn't require any edge finishing. So that was part of my strategy. And the same way that I did the back stitch, I'm going to do it here at the end. And then I'm comfortable literally just pulling it out from under the feet. I try and keep my stitching area cleaned up as I go. I don't like going back and having to cut all the threads. So like where I started, I'm going to go in and just cut that off now. You can do whatever you like, but that's just something I like to do. Okay, and then I'm going to go back to the top. And I will put just like a tiny little, I don't know what you would call that, pleat, just to cover it over. And I need to guide the rest of the garment under the foot first. And now the top. With the cover stitch, you always need to start with your needles in the fabric. So you have to make sure you have it lined up. And there we go. And again, no one's going to get their nose in there too close to know if you didn't quite start right. Lift it up. if there's not a lot of room, it's amazing actually how much fabric you can fit into the side of these. But if there's not a lot of room, you just do a piece at a time. So you're not overly stretching your fabric. Otherwise, it's not going to end up lined up very well. And again, about a ½ inch at a time. I'm going to actually lift that up and move it over just a tiny bit. There we go. I love the sound of this machine. It's pretty smooth. You can see there's a little tiny bit here. Don't worry about it. I can trim it off later if I want. And pulling some of that bulk through behind the foot. And adjustment. When you don't have to finish edges of fabric, it really can be speedy. And my bottom lined up almost perfect as the other side, but what I'm going to do is kind of make it perfect and hold the two bottoms together and then stretch it just a tiny bit so that it's lined up. Don't worry about going so fast that you can't control your fabric, because that can make a lot of ripping. I've done it. There we go. I guess this is one of those, you know, do not try this at home, maybe. And this is the hardest part. Once you get this done, you're golden. The sleeves are really quick. Pulling it off the stitch finger, putting it back under. And there we go. I have done this a lot, so don't be discouraged if you're trying to do it and it's just not coming together, except I've got a piece of thread caught somewhere. There we go. I know if I get to the right spot, it'll pull. There it is. I won't be showing you how to use your machine because I wing everything. Could be dangerous. And I'll go back up to the top where we started. And there's a few threads there. Okay. Okay. What's easier for you? So there you can see the insert of the lace. It's kind of fun. Okay, so now we're going to add the extra lace to the bottom of the shirt, the t-shirt. I just start at one side. It doesn't really matter what side you start at, but since I'm using a cover stitch that doesn't have a lot of room on the right hand side of the needle, I'm going to have the less bulk on the right hand side of the needle. Good strategizing. And I am going to match up the bottom of this lace piece along with the insert, just because I think it'll be a nice finish. When we're finished, it'll look nice. So needle up, foot up, glide it underneath. And when I'm using lace, the really great thing is you can see your fabric underneath. So I tend to use the edge of the foot as a guide with the edge of the t-shirt underneath. If I couldn't see it, I can probably feel it. Otherwise, you can mark it. You can mark your fabric with whatever works for you, so you know where the other layer of fabric is that you're trying to join together. You know. I usually do this without having to talk, so this is an interesting experience. And I went too far. There we go. There we go. And my little back stitch. And I can just sort of eyeball that I've got about a hand width, my hand width to my thumb of fabric in the long portion. So it just kind of gives me an idea. Honestly, when you're wearing it, you're moving. People aren't measuring if it's a 1/2 inch out of whack when it's just a piece of lace that you can see through. Sometimes it's nice to just whiz along. So now that I'm getting near the end, I want to make sure I've got enough length. And since both of these fabrics stretch, I'm going to match up the end of the additional lace to the insert. Make sure my bottom is sort of matching, close enough. And then I'll just hold this, and sometimes you need 3 arms, but that's okay. Don't want it to get caught in the stitching. And again, my tricky back stitch. I'm sure there's like a really better way to do this, but this works. I do it all the time. Okay. There we go. And again, I want to keep my threads clipped. And I'll go back to the beginning. And I'll show you the back too, just so you can see. It's not perfect, but it's not bad. I sort of, without even knowing I did it, I went along the edge of the original hem of the t-shirt, but I was kind of guiding with my foot width, which was a nice width. And clean up my threads. There we go. I check it always as I'm going along at each step. So you can see the bottom matches up. I am going to trim. I'm going to trim this little piece off the top. This lace is not going to fray, so it won't matter. That's looking pretty good already. You can see how the gray, it's kind of a bluey gray, really does work with the colors here. Like it just, I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, you know how we love how the thread cuts off automatically? Well, when you're gathering, you don't want it to cut off automatically. So I'm not going to cut it off. I'm actually going to do it the old-fashioned way. Because I want threads to pull. Okay. And I'm gonna give myself, oops, of course. You know, I own almost this identical machine and it doesn't have a lever on the back, and that's what I was gonna do. That's really funny. Put the foot down. And it does gather a little on its own, but I don't want it to totally gather, so I'm gonna just put a little tension on there as well. Okay. And now I'm going to do the same thing on the other cuff. Oop. That's so funny. Oh, because I was using that, that's why. My brain's wired for it. And I'm not pulling, I'm just putting a bit of tension on the fabric so it doesn't gather it too much. Foot up. And where'd my sleeve go? I'm gonna lay it flat. And I'm going to pull my gathering stitch. I'm using the thread on both sides. Okay, there's a front and a back to the lace. There's bumps on one side and no bumps on the other. On the side that has the bumps, that's the front, in my opinion. So as long as I pull the front thread or the top thread at both ends, I will not defeat my own sense of purpose in this. I just want this to fit good enough. And I am going to actually tie these off together. Not what couturists do, I'm sure, but that's okay. Just to keep it from gathering more or ungathering. And same on this one. And in this case, I'm not going to match it to the sleeve. I'm going to match it to the other cuff because it's more important that these are the same than trying to eyeball what I did with the other sleeve. And top thread. Didn't have too far to go. Got all 4 threads, and again, it's really not too, doesn't need to be too precise because we can adjust it as we stitch. Well, I can. If you've ever made pants before, sweatpants, pajama pants, the first couple times you try and figure out how to connect the two, oh my gosh, that can be tricky. You kind of have to think backwards. And these threads are telling me where my opening is, which I want at this little V. Oh, that was brilliant. Now I'm making sure that the gathered, you can feel the tension from the thread where I gathered it is about the same size as the actual sleeve. So I'm going to stitch that. And once we use the cover stitch, it'll give everything give. It'll get rid of that gathering stitch and it will allow it to all have stretch. and about a 1/2 inch. Half an inch of seam allowance is what I meant to say. Sorry. Okay, that'll give you a rough idea. Yeah, I'm gonna trim off the extra lace because when I cover stitch, I want the t-shirt fabric on the top. So I'm going to trim. Be careful not to cut the sleeve. Although with what we're doing, you could always add a little piece of lace on to cover a hole. But that wasn't what I really wanted to do. And I'm going to cut off my threads. I usually have a little thread catcher beside my machine. I don't really like to make a big mess with the threads, but this works for today. Okay. Yep, that's good. Now we'll do the other one. Don't fuss until you're done about whether you think it looks right. Because to me this looks terrible, but I know that it's going to look great by the time we finish the stitching. Okay, now I'm going to go back over to the cover stitch machine and do the sleeve cuffs, and we're pretty much done. Okay. I think I'm going to turn the sleeve inside out so that I'm not fighting with the when you're sewing it the right side up, part of the sleeve wants to go this way, and at the same time you're kind of working backwards. If you've ever tried to, what is it, an inset seam, I think. Anyway, I'm overthinking it. Okay, yeah. I just want to stitch on the top. That's it. I know, I was thinking of when I'm hemming pants. I prefer to do this. Okay. And I'm not going to back stitch because I'm going to stitch right over it because it's a circle. And I'm using the stitch line where I attached the lace to the sleeve as my guide, and I'm just lining it right up with the center of the needles. There's a method to the madness. I just keep pulling it around so I've got a flat stitching surface. Okay. I overstitched about 1 inch. Okay, so now we're going to do the second sleeve the same way as we did the first, cover stitching. I already turned the sleeve inside out. And we're going to top stitch essentially on top of the t-shirt. And again, I'm not doing the back stitch because I'm going to go right over it about 1 inch of double stitch when it loops around. And remember, I'm using the stitch line from where I added the lace to the t-shirt as my guide. If we had more time, I could have used a gathering foot on here and it would have attached the lace gathered onto the shirt, but that would have taken a little longer. So you don't have to have all the fancy gear, but if you have it, it's excellent. I do have that foot and it is pretty slick. Okay, we've come around. I'm gonna go back over about 1 inch. And now that's done. And essentially this is done. There's all kinds of things you could do. You could add more lace. You could add little, I was thinking of a tie, like on my sleeve. You could add a little tie where the t-shirt joins the lace. You could put hot set rhinestones. You could do all kinds of stuff. But this is a nice, simple project. Don't use your favorite top if it's your first time doing it. You might be disappointed. Use something you don't care about just to get the technique down. And if it works out great, fabulous. And if it doesn't, whew, you still have your favorite shirt. I'm going to snip these few threads and then I will put it on my little mannequin just so you can see. Oh, somehow I missed threads, heaven forbid. Okay, I think that turned out pretty darn good. For not much of a plan. Yeah, I like it. Okay. Putting it on the mannequin just really gives it a bit of shape so you can see better how it actually will look on. This is a small mannequin and a large shirt, but it's gonna work. Oh, that's cute. Oh, I didn't trim the bottom yet. Okay. So I will trim the bottom. If you have a rotary cutter set up, that actually works great. Make sure you don't cut the t-shirt. But these scissors are fabulous. And it is easy to cut when it's hanging, less likely to cut the shirt. So I can pull the lace out and see right through it. That's cute. So with this sleeve, it's really nice how it hangs open. And if you want, you could add a little piece of the lace or a little piece of the leftover part of the t-shirt and make a little tie back. Get it to the length you want. That'll be really cute. And then the back, oh, couldn't quite reach around there. Wing it. And see, look at that. That's the two separate pieces and they match perfect. And that's the thing. If you match certain parts, the rest really doesn't matter. And it's got the lining, so you don't have just plain skin. You could have plain skin if you want, but that wouldn't be what I'd be wearing. And this does have a funky little thing here. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to take the cover stitch and I am literally going to stitch just this little piece, and it will look like the shirt was actually made like that. So there you go. 2 shirts into one, and we have lots of leftovers to do fun things with. That's what I know.